Welcome to the training program of SBAIL based on the STEM Design and BuildR integrated learning model. The aim of this lesson is to present the STEM Design and BuildR integrated learning model, SBAIL, to teachers based on the experience gathered during its implementation in France. This lesson is about establishing clear objectives, motivation, principles, and the schedule of progress in order to have a clear idea of why should Roma people participate in it. As we have seen during the art lesson, the general objective is to strengthen the personal identity of learners by art development. So the first step of people interested to implement this workshop as trainers is to consult the STEM Design and BuildR paper act and the materials suggested in it for further understanding. With this, participants will have the notion concerning the two main aspects that trainers need to cover before implementing the workshop. One of the points, the most important, is to be aware of the specific background of the learners and their situation in their social context. The second one is to understand what is STEM design and BuildR in order to provide a clear perspective of the possibilities of art techniques that the workshop will provide. After this has been done, the main focus of this first module is to share and consult with participants the following three aspects. What are their motivations? Which are their principles that apply to their workshop? And what is the schedule and pre-methodology of the workshop in general? These three aspects are identified as the set workshop in the overall methodology of STEM Design and BuildR. So let's start with the first point. What are the objectives? It is important to set clear objectives on one hand in terms of motivation for the learners to participate. Why should they participate? So in order to respond to this, here we are going to provide the following three factors that can help to set clear and strong objectives. First, find clarity on the story the group wants to share. Everybody has an idea, but the vision needs to come from the group and not from one participant. Second, tap into their motivation to know why they have to say it. There must be something that they're interested in sharing about their culture or about their socio-demographic context. And third, learn how to best shape it into the inspiration and creation of a change. Do not forget that these three options will be consolidated during the whole process of the workshop, as they will allow the creation of the positive narrative in the art, which is linked to the first 5 lessons. But remember, at the beginning, they are just a starting point for you to learn the art of storytelling and also to provide a global vision to the participants. Also, they will help you, the 3 points, to get a clear objective with the contribution of participants. This is why we mentioned that it is important to be already aware of the specific backgrounds of the learners and their situation in their social context, since this methodology has been developed based on a principle in which learners and trainers have already a deep connection. If this is not the case, please take more time in order to get to know each other in the first exercise. So you have confidence, and also the participants have the confidence to express ideas and opinions, particularly for Roma people that might see you as an outsider. It might be easier to shape the 3 factors by answering the following questions. Which is their socio-demographic situation? Are they living with their families? Do they have kids, or do they have studies? Do they work? Which are their hobbies? What are their expectations for the upcoming years, etc. and etc. Build a profile of each of them and try to find aspects that they have in common. This might get you clues about what are their interests and what they would like to share, and of course, gain from this experience. For example, in the case of the pilot in France, we have settled a collaboration with Alteralia Association that has a long-lasting relationship with the community living at the Einstein village. Thanks to Alteralia, we had a pre-meeting with some social workers to know about the reality of the potential participants and what might be interesting for them to participate in this type of workshop. Alteralia experts shared with us that the majority of the people living in the Einstein village are in the process of integration and are looking also for opportunities to find a job, and very few of them are already working. Also, they told us that this workshop should be established as an opportunity to enjoy and share a moment rather than imposing a strict schedule, because a friendly approach will motivate them. The potential participants have some other tasks and worries, and if they have the impression that this workshop will be as a learning traditional class, they might not be interested to join the workshop. So when we arrive with them, we present ourselves in a very friendly way. We brought some food to share with them as a first way to introduce the workshop, and we mentioned that there was an opportunity to express their ideas by developing art, and that the objective of this workshop was to provide a space for them to express themselves. Immediately, they become interested, since they share that until that moment, they have not been able to discuss or showcase their image with the local community in a friendly way, and also that they have never experienced to show part of their culture by objects. So we all conclude at this stage that the objective of the workshop should be to develop an event to show a positive image of the village. This objective will be reinforced during the progress of the workshop, and more concrete aspects were developed during the lessons 3 and 4. Now, let's move to the second aspect, which are the principles that apply to your workshop. It is important to set principles, because these principles apply to your ideas, but also to the ideas and creativity of participants working with you, and others to create an art that is developed based on the valorization of diversity as an enrichment element of the teaching learning process. Therefore, inclusive education expresses the recognition of the diversity in needs of the participants, in terms of the skills and competences that they have, and the process of teaching should be adapted to these 3 aspects. Please keep in mind these through the activities, and be aware that you as a trainer need to support participants for clear understanding of the activities. Within the framework of the STEM Design and Build Art workshop, we guide all our educational actions from a human right approach. This means that all the lines of actions that are developed in the educational workshop must defend and protect the human rights of you and participants as part of the learner population. In order to have more information about which type of principles can help a good process, please consult Module 5, Inclusive Teaching and Acceptable Learning. For instance, one of the principles that we have provided is the principle of non-discrimination, which is at the core of the activities that you will do and that we did during the workshop in France. And this means that all people should have access to education. The concept of discrimination encompasses any distinction, exclusion, limitation due to ethnicity, LGBT sexuality, condition, political opinion, national or social origin, economic position, birth, or any other situation whose purpose or default is to destroy or alter equality. After the discussion of the objective with learners, we have discussed about the principles that should guide this workshop, and the ones that they mentioned were the following. First, respect. The majority of them have never had the opportunity to be enrolled in a workshop that is about creating art. And so they ask that respect will be important in order not to laugh or to get negative feelings by the rest of the participants when providing an idea. To think positive. We know that the Roma community of the Einstein village is a community that is on the way of integration and that they have passed for very difficult moments, but the objective of this workshop was to send a positive image to the community rather to focus on those experiences that have made them a group in the risk of exclusion. And finally, to be flexible. As the experts and social workers from Alteralia mentioned, they wanted to participate in this workshop, but they wanted to do it with their own competencies, in their own speed, having discussions with the trainers in order to adapt activities and to be more flexible in the way the process of teaching, learning, co-creation could happen. Finally, what is the schedule and pre-methodology? The PAL-R and STAMP design and BLR approaches are like lenses that give us guidelines in order to look at reality and interpret it. They provide us with the elements to analyze it and act on it. However, as you have seen, for this workshop, there are multiple approaches and materials that you can use, so the opportunities to create new paths of workshops are limitless. The importance is to keep the macro methodology of this workshop with the 7 phases, which are set the workshop, exploring identity, handling of technique, art workshop production, artwork, discourse, artistic exhibition, and evaluation. We have presented to them the methodology, but in a very simple way with short sentence so everybody understood and agreed on it. Some modifications were made and also some adjustments, but in the overall course of the workshop, we try to respect as much as possible these 6 dimensions. As you have understood by now, this workshop is different from the others as there is not a general structure when it comes to the creation of the object. And this comes because there is not a specific technique that you're going to use in order to develop an object. In the SBAIL workshop, actually you can combine different techniques and add the architectural dimension in order to co-create an object. So the techniques and the composition of the objects will depend on the participants and trainers' competencies and skills. So please try to provide as much as possible the position of making decisions with learners and to provide them with the decision in order to choose the materials and techniques. Now, one aspect that we would like to cover in this first lesson is also to draw your attention on the particular aspects of the evaluation. A learner review form or a learner review process should include a self-reflection questionnaire or a self-reflection activity so that you get a feedback from how they see themselves in the future and also the transformation that they have had. Here we have give you some points based on the perspective, for example, of the trainers. So how the participants can evaluate the trainer position during the workshop. And by that we mean, for example, if the participants feel that the trainer listen to them, understand their point of view. Also, if the learners feel respected by the trainer, if the trainer was sensible to their needs and also to their situation, and also if the trainer was there in order to help them when they needed clarifications or when they needed instructions. From the other part, we are having these 7 points in order to identify what are the common aspects in order to see if the workshop was having a positive impact. For example, if the objectives were clear since the beginning, if the organization of the workshop was good, implemented, the speed, if questions were encouraged through the workshop in order to raise concerns of all the participants, if the content was well organized, particularly if the workshop meet their expectations, if they think that they contribute to the decision of the workshop organization, and finally, if the artwork represents their experience and vision. These aspects are just some guidelines that we want to provide to you in order to think about the importance of having evaluation assessments during the implementation of the workshop. Now, in this lesson, we try to encourage, in the case of PALAR and the SBAIL in workshop in France, we try to encourage the democratization of culture in the approach. And that's why, as a first introduction to art, we have recommended that it is good to provide examples of an artist and their artworks before exercise 1 is implemented. And for this, we recommend you to consult the paper act of stand design and build art to see the examples. Additionally, it is recommended to invite to this session artists to talk with them about their artworks and their message behind their artworks. This will help learners to identify aspects from their timeline that they would like to highlight in artwork to position their identity in their social context. As a follow-up activity and to support the learning by motivation, it is important to immerse learners in the arts, and for that, a visit to the museum might be a good way of introducing. And also, direct talks with artists might be an interesting way to provide access to culture and inspiration for learners. For example, as part of the stand design build art workshop in Ivry-sur-Seine, learners visit the work of the different contemporary artists in the Bourse de Commerce Pinot collection. To provide access to culture is also an important aspect of this project, and therefore visiting expositions will help learners for their own process of expressing their ideas. In preliminary conversations with some Roma learners, they brought attention to some stereotypes that society put on them, as for example that all of them collect objects from the street and garage. From this aspect, one learner suggested to collect objects from the street and to provide an artwork based on this subject. As a result, the trainers for this workshop in Ivry-sur-Seine identified that it might be good to visit the Pinot collection, particularly to appreciate the work of David Hammond. David Hammond has become the herald of an aesthetic of difference, drawing ironically on his own experience as a Black American. The artist, by publishing aside symbols that are too smooth or shifting stereotypes, has been able to tackle issues of race, class, history of art, and the heritage of slavery in an accurate way. With such success, he has been led to reject the compromises of artistic success, redefining art on its own terms and often outside of traditional venues. For some artworks, the artist collects materials from the street, and that's why for us it was interesting following the feedback that we got from the participants or potential participants that mentioned that it was interesting to collect objects from the recycle. Note that these artists, when you provide an access to artworks or to have a conversation with an artist, those artists do not have to come from a Romani background. And I guess sometimes it is recommended not to provide examples of direct artists of their culture to not block originality due to the tendency to reproduce what has been already done. For example, they can talk about a local artist or an international well-known artist, such as Frida Kahlo, for example, that through her artwork, she explored her identity and portrayed her story. Thank you for listening to the Lesson 1 Set the Workshop Museum. For more information in methodology and pedagogical aspects, please consult the paper act of SBAIL. For the results of the different lessons and the workshops, please consult the learning section of this PALAR SBAIL workshop. Thank you.